Part 29. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 310. Minayuping quickly squatted down and opened their hands, and everything slipped out of their palms. If you look closely, you will see that they are all Tianyuan and local coins. Minayuping secretly said something bad. Including what they had taken away before, a total of 16 coins had been taken away. The coffin has 8 corners, and 16 coins sealed its inner and outer layers. Now they have all been removed. Looking further down the ground, the land near the coffin turned blood red and gave off a fishy smell. Minayuping narrowed his eyes and saw that the thing in the black coffin had actually drank blood. It looks like the situation is completely different. The black coffin drinks blood, and the contents inside have become a climate, which cannot be solved by a simple two-step method. Minayuping thought that these diggers on the ground might have been greedy for money for a while, and ran back again. Unintentionally, the black coffin controlled their minds and took out all the sealed coins. Then, the black coffin without the seal allowed evil energy to enter their bodies. This group of people must have started killing each other, and in the end they all died cleanly. Minayuping quickly ran to the 5 black pillars to check. Fortunately, the iron chains on these pillars were not broken, otherwise the black coffin would not be able to seal the contents inside. At this moment, the iron chains suddenly swayed loudly. In an instant, all 5 iron chains broke through the soil, stretched straight in the air, and kept shaking. The black coffin in the middle, which was originally tilted, suddenly stood upright at this moment. It was still half buried in the soil, and now it is fully visible. The entire black coffin was shaking violently, and all the iron chains tied to it were being pulled and made a bumping sound. From inside the coffin, there were shrill screams and violent knocking sounds. "Let me out! Let me out!" The shouting inside never stopped. At this moment, Minayuping saw that the 5 black iron chains suddenly turned red, and there were bursts of high temperature, as if they were about to melt. The 5 red iron chains were tightly surrounding the black coffin, puffs of white smoke came from above. The coffin shook a few times and sank into the ground again, until half of it was exposed. And the iron chains all returned to their original appearance, drooping on the ground. All of this appeared and disappeared in just a minute or two. Minayuping didn't even know whether what just happened was an illusion. But when Minayuping saw those black marks on the ground, Minayuping thought that all this had really happened. Menuping quickly put all the coins in their hands into his pocket, and also took out the knife that Sumu had given to Menuping. Every time he put the knife on his hands, a chill can reach straight to the bottom of Minayuping's heart, keeping Minayuping in a state of sobriety. Menuping can clearly feel that the fog around him has dispersed a lot. Now the black coffin, Minayuping had not thought of any Taoist techniques that could be used to deal with it, so he had no choice but to resort to Sumu's most primitive method, which was to outsmart him and directly use violence to deal with it. After walking a few steps, Minayuping discovered that there was no change in the distance between the black coffin and Minayuping. Minayuping felt cold in his heart. The coffin still didn't allow Minayuping to get close to him. It was obvious that the yin body of Minayuping was an irresistible temptation for him. Minayuping shouted loudly, "Hey! What do you mean? Don't you want to drain my blood? Why aren't you allowed to come over?" A roar suddenly came from the coffin, shouting, "Get out! I have no enmity with you, so don't come here to harm me." Having been told this by a fierce ghost, Menuping was still a little confused. A vicious creature actually said that he wanted to harm him. However, Menuping did not dare to just let down his guard like this. The evil ghosts had many ways to deal with humans. Deception is also a trick often used among them. Minayuping looked at the black coffin coldly and said, "Am I here to harm you? You killed so many innocent people, I'm here to deal with you." Innocent people. The black coffin stopped suddenly, and then started to tremble crazily. Ha 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 ha, you actually talked to me about innocent people. Did you kill fewer people than me? Mi Nayuping was stunned and shouted, are you telling a fucking story? I can't even understand it. With the help of Bagwa's 7-star steps, Mi Nayuping had already approached the coffin. He held a piece of Tianyuan local money between his left index finger and middle finger, and flew directly towards the corner of the coffin. The coin was firmly inserted into that corner. The thing inside yelled, do you want to seal me? Now that the double-layer Bagua array has been broken, what can you do? When I come out, I will torture you severely. Then you will never be able to do it in this life, Mi Nayuping replied. Then, 3 more copper coins were shot out, sealing the triangle of the coffin. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 311. The black coffin had stopped talking and suddenly rose from the ground, trying to reach the sky. However, it was tightly held by 5 chains, leaving it hanging in mid-air. This time, it no longer trembled, but continued to rotate. The 5 chains continued to rotate on it, and they were tightened tighter and tighter. Snapped. A chain suddenly broke, and the entire black coffin fell in that direction and hit the ground heavily. The coffin lid, which was originally locked, now revealed a gap. The 5 elements tribulation fire formation was broken. In an instant, the huge yin energy rushed out from the gap, instantly turning the originally extremely hot reservoir into extremely cold. A stream of black energy rushed out from the coffin. In less than a moment, the sky above the reservoir in the feature film became filled with black mist. The sun's rays have been blocked. The originally sunny day has turned into a dark night. The vertical coffin lies horizontally, a disaster is imminent. This thing is about to be born. The stuffy oil bottle stabbed the ground hard with a knife, resisting the waves of darkness, the impact of the gas. Looking over there through the gap between the fingers, except for the side that was just sealed by the oil bottle, the other side has now opened, an opening a hand wide. The oil bottle can see that there is a big black hand. He had already touched the edge of the coffin. Finally, the black air accumulated in the coffin stopped leaking, and Mi Nayuping pulled out the knife. The double-layer Bagua array was only a quarter completed, and at most it could only delay it for a while. The stuffy oil bottle immediately shot out 3 talismans, but before they even got close to the black coffin, the 3 talismans burned into ashes in the air. Hateful, Mi Nayuping cursed. He didn't dare to stop the movements in his hands, and shot out all the remaining 4 copper coins, hitting them all on the head of the coffin, forming a small 3-talent formation. A scream came from inside the coffin, and then the black hand retracted again. The oil bottle continued to move forward, wanting to kill this thing completely. However, when the oil bottle approached the mouth of the coffin, another black gas suddenly spewed out from inside, spraying directly on the coffin. Men Yuping's eyes. Men Yuping felt the world spin for a while, and a cold air rushed straight into Men Yuping's mind. Men Yuping's hands and feet could feel this icy chill. At this moment, it felt like he was about to, it looked like it was frozen. He closed his eyes tightly, and Mi Nayuping bit the tip of his tongue, and a touch of true yang blood was spat out by Mi Nayuping on his hands. A warm current instantly came from his 2 palms, and Mi Nayuping was finally able to regain his strength. Activity. When Mi Nayuping opened his eyes, Mi Nayuping was actually standing in a team, walking forward. Mi Nayuping felt that his shoulders were a little heavy. When he looked back, Mi Nayuping was lifting a sip. Coffin. Mi Nayuping shook his head, and when he opened his eyes, he saw that I was still in this team. There were only 5 people in the coffin-carrying team, a leading Taoist priest and 4 of them carrying the coffin, including one who played gongs and drums. None. Mi Nayuping didn't know what happened, so he had to follow them forward. When he came to a piece of yellow land, Mi Nayuping saw a deep and wide pit dug in front of him, and around the pit, it was a black wooden pillar without roots. Mi Nayuping looked at the black iron chain on the wooden pillar. Isn't this where the black coffin was buried? Liuzi, why are you in a daze? Why don't you come over and help me? One person suddenly shouted towards Mi Nayuping. Mi Nayuping immediately came back to his senses and saw that they were putting iron chains on the coffin. Mi Nayuping then looked back at the coffin lid. The big characters on it were still engraved on it. There, killing your wife and seizing your son is irreconcilable. Menyuping also hurried over to help. After locking the iron chain, the 4 men of Menyuping raised the coffin upright and inserted it into the deepest pit. The leading Taoist priests saw Menyuping. After they finished doing this, they told Mi Nayuping to leave quickly. Just when Mi Nayuping turned around, a person shouted from inside the coffin, "Let me out quickly. Otherwise I will kill your whole family." The Taoist master slapped the Buddha dust in his hand towards the coffin lid and said in a cold voice, "You evil beast, you swallowed the blood of women and children to practice demonic skills. You have already been outraged by both humans and gods. Today, the Taoist will definitely seal you, and you will be tortured by the fire of karma forever." Menyuping was in a trance, and somehow he had reached the edge of the pit. At this moment, he was lying here looking at the Taoist priest and the coffin in the pit. Next to Menyuping, there was also a child. When he saw Mi Nayuping looking at him, he raised his index finger and made a shh motion towards Menyuping. Somehow, Menyuping said, "Your name is not Zhangzhong." The kid looked at Mi Nayuping strangely and said, "Second uncle, stop talking and hurry up and watch the show." After saying that, he ignored Mi Nayuping and moved his body over there. Although they were far away, Mi Nayuping could hear the movement in the pit. He only heard the Taoist priest shouting. One voice, the heavenly official gives blessings, and the 8 diagram seals the coffin. As soon as the voice fell, bursts of yellow light came from the 8 corners of the coffin. Mi Nayuping could clearly see that the coins that were originally on the surface of the coffin actually sank in. There were constant crashing sounds from the coffin, and that people roared, "Damn Taoist priest, when I come out, I will kill all of you, and then kill everyone in the village, ha 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 ha." Ah! Suddenly, the roar inside stopped and turned into a shrill scream. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 313. Suddenly, there were a few more thunders in the sky. Mi Nayuping looked up at the sky, and saw several rays of thunder actually penetrated the dark clouds and rolled faintly in the clouds. Looking at the broken chains again, Mi Nayuping thought of a way. Menyuping rushed towards the trembling black coffin, ignoring its 2 disgusting black hands, and stepped on the coffin lid. Kicking hard on the coffin lid with both feet, Mi Nayuping jumped into the air. He pointed the mahogany sword in his hand at the sky and shouted, "The universe is infinite, and the thunder from the sky will destroy the demons." The thunder light in the sky was still flashing, a beam of thunder light. It seemed that he heard Mi Nayuping's call and rushed towards Mi Nayuping's peachwood sword. The lightning wrapped around the mahogany sword and kept moving downwards. It didn't take long before it hit Mi Nayuping's body. Mi Nayuping endured the pain of his body being ravaged by lightning, and continued to exercise the magic formula, mobilizing the internal force in his body to protect his heart. After the thunder stopped falling in the sky, Mi Nayuping jumped to the highest point and his body began to fall down. With the help of the gravity and speed of the fall, Mi Nayuping threw the sword in his hand down hard and shouted, "Cut!" The peachwood sword, mixed with the power of thunder and lightning, rushed into the gap in the black coffin. Mi Nayuping saw a flash of lightning in the black coffin, and the entire coffin instantly became silent. Seeing this situation, the Mi Nayu bottle fell towards the ground. The body that had just been stimulated by lightning was already a little weak at the moment. Just when Mi Nayuping was about to fall to the ground, Shirley Yang caught Mi Nayuping. However, Before Mina Yuping could say thank you, she threw Mina Yuping on the ground. Mina Yuping slowly got up and said, "Smelly bitch, even if it's just once, can't you be gentler?" Mina Yuping thought that this thing had been solved by Mina Yuping, but he didn't expect Mina Yuping to go away. 2 steps later, there was another movement from the coffin. Mr. Zhang shouted, "Be careful, this thing is not dead yet." Mina Yuping was stunned and looked towards the coffin. He saw Mina Yuping's peachwood sword suddenly exploded and broke into pieces and flew out of the coffin. There was a burst of harsh laughter from inside the coffin. "Ha ha ha ha, the oil bottle has already turned into a zombie. Your weak thunder and lightning means nothing to me. That old man couldn't kill me back then, but today neither can you." Mina Yuping was shocked by its laughter. His chest suddenly felt tight, and a trace of blood overflowed from the corner of his mouth. Mina Yuping really didn't expect that the art of attracting thunder would cause such great damage to the body. The crunching sound of the chains sounded again, and the remaining 3 chains were straightened again. The whole coffin suddenly shook, and Mr. Zhang was also ejected. Even though he is a master in the inner circle, he cannot resist the overload of his muscles for such a long time. Mina Yuping was so anxious that he vomited a mouthful of blood and almost fell to the ground. Shirley Yang quickly held the bottle of oil firmly so that it would not fall. Men Yuping said tremblingly, "Shirley Yang, please leave me alone and find a way to stop it." Men Yuping moved his wrist, trying to break away from Shirley Yang's support. However, she did not move at all, but said coldly, "The only person here who can think of a way to destroy it is you. If you don't think of a way quickly, we will all die with you." After hearing this, Shirley Yang Mina Yuping didn't know whether to cry or laugh. After thinking about it calmly, it was indeed true. Although Shirley Yang had studied for a few days, she was not at all capable of facing these evil things. Looking at the rolling black coffin, Mina Yuping felt a bit of pressure. He never expected that Mina Yuping would have to face such a terrifying thing alone. Boom! A few more muffled sounds came from the sky. Mina Yuping looked up and saw that the thunder clouds above the dark clouds had not dispersed yet. When Mina Yuping saw this, he said word by word, "The extremely evil is born. Heaven and earth cannot tolerate it." If the 5 elements tribulation fire array hadn't disrupted the yin and yang energy here, the thunder and lightning in the sky would have struck down directly. Looking at the gloomy air in the sky, Mina Yuping continued, "We must find a way to bring down the thunder and lightning in the sky. This kind of heaven and earth cannot tolerate anything, and we can only leave it to God to punish us." Snapped. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 315. 5 thunders in one. The 5 lightning bolts quickly gathered together, forming a spherical lightning in front of the old man. When he saw the lightning, he grabbed it directly with both hands and pressed it into the coffin. Mina Yuping heard the screams inside, and he was when the old man was about to take his hand out, 2 black hands suddenly appeared in the coffin, grabbing him tightly and shouting, "Old man, just go to hell with me." Seeing this, Shirley Yang took a knife and wanted to help, but she didn't expect the old man to yell, "Don't come over. Even if you cut off my hand now, my body will be almost destroyed by lightning. Ha 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 ha, old man, the happiest day in my life is today. Little master, you must be an earth fairy. After the old man dies, remember to choose a good piece of land for me." In the desperation of Mina Yuping and Shirley Yang, the old man's hands moved forward instead of retreating, pressing in 3 more points. Boom! With a loud noise, the black coffin was completely engulfed by lightning and turned into powder. In an instant, a huge wave of air rushed over, pushing Mina Yuping and Shirley Yang directly to the ground. Mina Yuping looking at the sky with squinted eyes, the thick clouds were instantly destroyed without a trace. In the sky, sunlight shone again. After the impact stopped, Shirley Yang slowly climbed up while stroking the bottle of stuffy oil. Men Yuping looked at the center of the explosion. Except for a piece of black dirt and a deep pit, there was nothing left here. There was no coffin, and there were no 5 pillars. The scene was empty, as if nothing had happened. Suddenly, a spray of water sprayed out from the center of the pit. Slowly, the spray became bigger and bigger, and finally turned into a thick water column. Shirley Yang shouted no. The explosion just now emptied the ground, and now the underground undercurrent is rushing up. This place will be flooded soon. As she said that, she supported Mi Na Yuping and rushed to the side as hard as she could. However, the sound of the water flow became louder and louder. They were all seriously injured now and could not run fast at all. Before Men Yuping and men reached the edge, the water flow has already submerged the shoes of Mi Na Yuping. The water level continues to rise. As soon as they reached the edge of the reservoir, the groundwater has already submerged their knees. Mi Na Yuping shook Shirley Yang away and said, "Evil woman, please leave quickly, you can't run up there with me on your back." Shirley Yang didn't say anything. She tore off Men Yuping's clothes, pulled a few cloth straps to tie Men Yuping behind her back, and climbed directly up the stairs. The originally 2-meter-high staircase was today it looked like a ladder to heaven. Shirley Yang climbed up 3 steps and had to stop to rest. Her muscles were trembling, and the water level had reached the waist of the men's oil bottles. "See you men's oil bottles!" shouted Evil Bitch, "you are my fucking bodyguard, can't you just listen to me once?" "Shut up." The words were thrown coldly at her, and she continued to climb up. After climbing 2 more thresholds, the water level was already above her chest, and Mi Na Yuping could feel the strong sense of oppression, which was a bit difficult. "Breathe." At this time, Shirley Yang's feet suddenly slipped, and Mi Na Yuping suddenly felt that the 2 people fell into the reservoir. When Mi Na Yuping woke up again, Mi Na Yuping found that he was already lying on a big bed. Mysterious confused, Mi Na Yuping suddenly remembered Shirley Yang and sat up immediately. As soon as Mi Na Yuping sat up, he saw the village chief sitting beside the bed. Mi Na Yuping quickly asked village chief, "Shirley, where is Yang?" The village chief was startled by Mi Na Yuping sitting up so suddenly, and then said, "Ha ha, the little Taoist, calm down, the little girl is fine, she is outside basking in the sun now." Men Yuping felt relieved when he heard what the village chief said. It turned out that after the village chief took the villagers away that day, he was a little worried about them, so he ran back with 2 men, and happened to hear an explosion near the reservoir. "We rushed over. When they arrived, Mi Na Yuping and Shirley Yang happened to be falling, so they rescued us. Mi Na Yuping's body was struck by lightning and was seriously injured. He has been sleeping until now. It's the 3rd day. Shirley Yang's injuries were lighter than Mi Na Yuping's, but she was a little weak from the yin energy of the coffin. She had recovered after sleeping all night. After getting up and eating something, Mi Na Yuping went out. I found Shirley Yang sitting on the steps at the door of the house and resting. I didn't know what she was looking at, but she was looking at it very seriously. Mi Na Yuping walked over and sat next to her and said, "Shirley Yang, what's going on with the reservoir? Thank you very much." She heard Mi Na Yuping thank her and suddenly laughed. Shirley Yang smiled and said, "I never thought that a little thief like you would still say thank you." Tomb Raider, marry Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 330. Mi Na Yuping held the spell tightly in his hand and said, "Thank you, Master. I will definitely bring the spell back safely at this time." Master Kukai suddenly said, "Little brother, donor, Shirley Yang, you too, and Mi Na Yuping Buddha is destined to give you a gift today, be careful of the sudden wind." Mi Na Yuping and Shirley Yang were stunned at the same time. The words of a senior monk could not be nonsense, but the deep meaning in them was. "Can't understand it?" Mi Na Yuping gave all the gifts that Sumu had prepared on his body to the master, and then went down the mountain with Shirley Yang. As soon as we got down to the town, it was already dark. Men Yuping and Shirley Yang walked slowly on the street, preparing to find the accommodation that had been booked by someone before. Suddenly, a cool breeze came oncoming. Being blown by the wind, Min Yuping suddenly felt his whole body shaking, as if something dangerous was approaching. Shirley Yang also directly touched the butt of the gun. Min Yuping didn't know what it was, so he immediately recited the calming mantra silently, and Shirley Yang also began to recite the mantra. After a while, we both felt much more comfortable. At this moment, a figure covered in blood suddenly rushed out from the front. He was wearing a black vest and his arms were covered with tattoos. He was holding a pistol and rushing toward us while yelling. He spoke in Japanese, and Min Yuping couldn't understand him at all. Shirley Yang immediately protected the oil bottle behind her, and we both stepped aside. The man looked at us in horror and continued running forward. But not long after running, he actually fell into the river. Min Yuping wanted to run to save people, but Shirley Yang stopped Min Yuping and said, "Don't cause trouble. This man is from the Japanese underworld. I'm afraid he is being hunted by his enemies." However, Min Yuping hit him. When I jumped into the river, I saw a woman wearing white clothes standing there. The side face of that woman was so white that there was no trace of blood, and her eye sockets were also deep black. Min Yuping looked at her, feeling that she was definitely a ghost. Moreover, it is still a ghost with deep resentment. Just looking at her like that, the cool breath filled Min Yuping's body again. Min Yuping immediately took out a copper coin and placed it in the palm of his hand, and then the cool atmosphere receded again. But if it was there or not, Min Yuping still felt the presence of that yin energy. Min Yuping immediately patted Shirley Yang on the shoulder with a copper coin, and she felt much better. Shirley Yang also discovered the woman's existence and already had the pistol in her hand. We both looked over there warily. Min Yuping asked softly, "Evil lady, what was the Japanese man who jumped down just now saying? I saw that you looked wrong when you saw him rushing over. I'm afraid you didn't tell us to give way." Shirley Yang's expression changed slightly. "Change and said what he just said is, don't come over. Your death has nothing to do with Min Yuping." Min Yuping doesn't know anything. After listening to Min Yuping, he immediately had the answer to the identity of this woman in his heart. I'm afraid he is a bad guy who has become a bad guy. Otherwise, it would be impossible to have such a dark aura. Just as I was thinking about it, the white woman by the river had disappeared. In an instant, an extremely cold breath rushed down from the top of his head. Min Yuping subconsciously looked above his head and couldn't help but squint his eyes. On the wall of the second floor, there was a white thing lying on the wall. It was the woman by the river just now. As for her eyes, Min Yuping finally saw clearly. They didn't have black eye sockets at all, but completely black eyelids without a trace of white. This pair of eyes was full of resentment and death. Shirley Yang fired directly at the woman. After hearing a scream, the woman disappeared and only a bullet hole with white smoke was seen. The sound of gunfire was extremely harsh, directly breaking the silence of the night. After one shot, she took Min Yuping's hand and rushed outside, saying, "Run quickly, security will be here soon." Min Yuping let go of Shirley Yang's hand and started running too. When Min Yuping looked back again, the woman appeared under the street lamp again. Shirley Yang recovered quickly. She was still nervous just now, but now she was chatting with the hotel owner like a normal person. She took the key in her hand and walked towards the oil bottle. Seeing that she only took one key, Min Yuping was a little surprised and asked, "Am I going to live together tonight?" "What, can't it?" She replied coldly, "When you encounter something like this, do you still have to act separately?" Min Yuping doesn't care. Min Yuping just thinks that it's not good for her as a girl to live with Min Yuping. But looking at her look, Min Yuping seems a little stingy. When she came to the room inside, Min Yuping discovered that there was no bed in the Japanese residence, and a quilt was laid directly on the floor. Mi Nayuping couldn't help but said these Japanese people are so stingy, they didn't even prepare a bed for us. Menjubottle just knocked on the wall and found that it was not solid. Shirley Yang said while sorting out. What do you know? Japan is an earthquake-prone country. In order to minimize casualties, of course the houses are built with wood. As for the lack of beds, there are many reasons. One of them is that they were influenced by the culture of the Tang dynasty, so they have always maintained the tradition of sleeping on tatami. The bed was made, and Mi Nayuping and she each had a set of quilts. There was nothing to do at night, so we turned off the lights. In the darkness, Mi Nayuping thought of the woman in white again, with such a heavy resentment. It's rare even in the Celestial Empire. She can't even be called a ghost. She can actually appear directly in front of us. I'm afraid she has condensed her resentment into reality. Mi Nayuping glanced at Shirley Yang. I found that although she was sleeping, her right hand was still touching the gun. This alertness was worthy of someone who had been on the battlefield, and Mi Nayuping couldn't compare with it. As if she sensed Mi Nayuping's gaze, she suddenly opened her eyes. Mi Nayuping's eyes met, and Mi Nayuping immediately changed his gaze. Shirley Yang said, "Little pervert, if you mess around at night, Mi Nayuping will kill you with one shot." After hearing what she said, Mi Nayuping was not happy anymore and said, "Evil lady, don't worry, with your figure, even if you take off your clothes and stand in front of Mi Nayuping will not touch you." After saying that, Mi Nayuping was too lazy to pay attention to her, and turned over to prepare for sleep. Although he said so, I have to say that Shirley Yang has a very good figure. It should be convex and curled up. If it was placed in the school. With her face, she must be a charming schoolgirl. Just thinking about it, Mi Nayuping fell asleep. In the dream, Mi Nayuping actually dreamed of Shirley Yang wearing a swimsuit and playing with Mi Nayupington on the beach. She kept splashing in the water, and Mi Nayupington also kept splashing water on her. They were having so much fun that Mi Nayupington couldn't help laughing. Suddenly, the whole scene changed. The sky became extremely dark, there was no one on the beach, not even Shirley Yang was here anymore. Mi Nayuping looked around in panic, but still couldn't find her, so he shouted loudly, "Shirley Yang! Shirley Yang! You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Tomb Raider, marry Shirley Yang at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 352. As he said this, the two of them walked together and hugged each other, then turned into white points of light and disappeared into the hall. Mi Nayuping looked at it for a while and thought it was over. Unexpectedly, Fujimura on the ground suddenly opened his eyes again. Qingming shouted, "Brother, get out of the way." Mi Nayuping heard this and subconsciously hid to the right, just in time to dodge the fatal sword strike from Fujimura. At this moment, Mi Nayuping was in the weak stage of the late stage of the magic surgery and had no strength to fight against him anymore. Qingming saw that Mi Nayuping had no strength, so he immediately stood in front of Mi Nayuping and fought with him. Watching from the side, Mi Nayuping was secretly surprised that the fighting skills of these two people were no less than that of Su Mu. I am afraid that their sword moves were much better than Su Mu's. As they continued to move, the two of them had arrived in an open courtyard outside the hall. Sime was seen dodging and avoiding, but did not fight with Fujimura head-on. Seeing that he didn't dodge the blow, Mi Nayuping drew a spell on the ground with his hand and muttered something at the end. 5 times in a row, he did the same thing at 5 points. However, just as he was carving the last spell, Fujimura stabbed him in the back and cut him down to the ground. Mi Nayuping was shocked and quickly stood up and wanted to go over to help, but there was a burst of energy and blood in his body, and Mi Nayuping fell directly to the ground again. Fujimura walked up to Qingming with a sneer, raised his sword and said with a sneer, "Qingming, it's all over." As he said that, In Mi Na Yuping's shocked eyes, he pierced King Ming's heart with one sword. He looked up to the sky and laughed, and Mi Na Yuping couldn't help but close his eyes tightly. However, at this time, things changed again. Qing Ming, who had fallen to the ground, suddenly disappeared at this moment. What was stabbed on the sword was actually a small white paper man. Mi Na Yuping suddenly smiled. He had seen this thing when he first came here. It was King Ming's substitute technique. Suddenly, Mi Na Yuping saw Fujimura turn his head suddenly, and behind him, there was Qing Ming chanting a spell loudly. He wanted to go there and chop Qing Ming, but when he took a step forward, in Mi Na Yuping's surprised eyes, one Qing Ming suddenly turned into 5, all of them were exactly the same. Mi Na Yuping was extremely surprised. At this moment, Mi Na Yuping's yin and yang eyes were still open. The auras emitted by these 5 King Ming's bodies were exactly the same. There was no difference between the avatar and the original body. Amidst the 5 Sime's spells, a 5-pointed star-shaped talisman appeared on the ground, binding Fujimura tightly to the center. He screamed in agony, then his hands softened and he dropped the sword to the ground. A black 5-pointed star seal appeared on his forehead, and the black energy and innocent souls in the sky all poured into his body crazily. The sky cleared up again. At this moment, Qing Ming shouted, "Brother, destroy Tenkan quickly." After hearing this, Mi Na Yuping yelled and climbed up, holding the talisman in his hand. The talisman of the oil bottle also has the talisman of Qing Ming. Menjuping recited a spell urgent like a law, seal the devil and destroy it. The 8 spells were shot out at the same time and attached to Tenkan's 8 acupuncture points. The chi and blood boiling in his body solidified instantly, and he was right there before their eyes. It turned into a black stone. Mi Na Yuping sighed and sat on the ground. It was finally over. This black stone, all condensed from resentment, just caught Fujimura's body as a carrier, allowing them to completely seal it. Closing his eyes tightly, Mi Na Yuping almost passed out. The dazzling sunlight shone in his eyes, and Mi Na Yuping thought he could go back. When Mi Na Yuping opened his eyes again, Mi Na Yuping found that he was still lying in King Ming's room and hurriedly walked out. According to general circumstances, as long as a specific thing is completed, Mi Na Yuping should return to where he was. When Qing Ming saw Mi Na Yuping wake up, he smiled and said, "Are you surprised that you are still in my home?" Mi Na Yuping was shocked. Could it be that Qing Ming knew that he came from the future? Chapter 218. He walked over with a cruel expression, holding Mi Na Yuping's hand while walking, and said with a smile, "The universe is so big and mysterious, and time is just a small law in the universe." As they spoke, the two of them had arrived. Next to the well, he pointed inside, and Mi Na Yuping looked inside, but saw nothing. Mi Na Yuping asked puzzledly, "Qing Ming, what do you want me to see? There is only well water in here." Qing Ming smiled and said, "Bend down a little more and take a look." Mi Na Yuping smiled when he saw him. Sincerely, he leaned half of his body in. When Mi Na Yuping felt that his head had entered the mouth of the well, there was a sudden force of gravity on his butt, which was obviously a kick from someone. Mi Na Yuping's whole body was leaning forward, but now someone kicked Mi Na Yuping behind him, causing him to fall directly into the well. Behind Mi Na Yuping, I heard King Ming's laughing voice, and a seemingly distant saying, "Where it comes from, it goes there." Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 379. Rogue. Shirley Yang glanced at Sumu disdainfully. Sumu seemed to understand what they were talking about, and immediately explained, "Listen to my explanation, it's not what you think. Lying here is the woman in red. Do you still remember the one I mentioned before?" After hearing this, Mi Na Yuping took Sumu's shoulders and brought him to the coffin, shouting, "Look carefully, there is a woman in red somewhere." After hearing this, Sumu looked down and saw that there was indeed a woman lying in the coffin, but it was not a woman in red clothes. The woman in the coffin had no clothes on her body. The reason why they all looked at her like this was because of this: there is not a trace of decay in this corpse. It is said to be a corpse, but this woman is like a real person. Not only is her face rosy, her skin is also extremely smooth, with a slight wheat yellow color. Her eyes are gently closed, and her lips are a light pink color, as if someone had just fallen asleep. Sumyu was confused again. Why did he have the hallucination of the woman in red again? This is too much unbelievable, Professor Tan said in surprise, which made Sumyu's confused mind stop thinking about the woman. I have seen many corpses. Even the wet corpse in Ma Wangdui was not so well preserved, even the stone. There are no spots or sallow color. The stuffy oil bottle knocked Sumyu twice on the head and looked at Sumyu with a look of hatred for steel. Sumyu held his head and looked at the body. Apart from the woman, there was only a dark spear in the coffin. Although 1,000 years have passed, you can still feel the cold light emanating from it. Professor Tan looked around and seemed to be talking to himself. This coffin is so luxurious, but the inside is so simple. I don't know what this woman is. What is your identity? According to the information I have, there are not many introductions to the women around the great virtue Heavenly King. Professor Tan suddenly reached out and wanted to pull down the female corpse, but was stopped by Huang Wangsheng. Professor, if you touch it like this, the female corpse may have absorbed the yang energy and transform into a corpse. Professor Tan shook off his hand and said with a smile, Mr. Huang, don't worry, I also have archaeological experience. Besides, even if something happens, aren't there still experts like you? As soon as Professor Tan came closer, the light illuminated the female body more clearly. She was really beautiful. She looked to be in her 20s at most, with high breasts and very attractive. She must have been a great beauty when she was alive. Professor Tan put her when he moved his hand. The arm was not broken by him. Instead, it was extremely soft, just like a real person. When he moved the female corpse, Sumyu immediately noticed something was wrong. The body of the female corpse actually started to grow. The body of the originally beautiful female corpse was covered with layers of white hair. Just for a moment, the body of the originally beautiful female corpse was covered with layers of white hair. Professor Tan was shocked by this situation. The eyes of the female corpse seemed to open, and the two eyes glowed. The green light was shining, and the corners of his mouth were slightly raised. Before Sumyu could throw the black donkey's hooves down, Professor Tan's hand holding the torch trembled, and he took a step back, and the torch was thrown directly into the coffin. It seemed like because there is a layer of silk underneath the female corpse, throwing the torch and brushing it will immediately set the entire coffin on fire. The female corpse has not yet completed its transformation, and after such a long time, the skin on her body has already waxed, so at one point, it was instantly enveloped in flames. The flames rushed upward, and everyone hurriedly stepped back. Professor Tan got too close and fell to the ground due to the fire. Sumyu quickly stepped forward to help him up. Everyone only heard a piercing scream, and a blackened hand stretched out from the coffin. Everyone took a few steps back, and the black hand was immediately swallowed up by the flames and fell down again. Before everyone could recover, this Jasper coffin had another unexpected incident. In a loud rumbling sound, the entire Jasper coffin exploded and turned into random pieces. Then, these fragments melted cleanly like ice cubes and turned into pieces. It turned into a puddle of green water. The accidents continued, and the entire tomb trembled, as if it was about to collapse. In the innermost part of the tomb, the gapless wall suddenly opened a hole, and a red figure appeared inside. Small box. Under everyone's feet, cracks appeared one after another, and the stairs leading here have also turned into gravel. Mi Nayuping and the others quickly tried to find a way to rush towards the entrance and exit, hoping to use their strength to rush. When others saw it, they all imitated Mi Nayuping and rushed over there quickly. However, at this time, Professor Tan ran towards the red box at the back. Seeing how crazy he was, Sumu also paid attention. Not caring about his own safety, he ran over in 3 steps at a time, took the red box, and ran to the entrance where he came from. When everyone ran there, the entrance was blocked. Everyone they had no choice but to stand close to the wall. After a violent vibration, the ground collapsed completely, and a bottomless black hole appeared where the jade coffin had been. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. The hole did not affect everyone. On the side, there were only some cracks under everyone's feet. As soon as the big hole appeared, everyone felt a strong wind rushing in from underneath, making everyone couldn't help but squint their eyes. This wind was extremely cool, as if coming from the outside world is blowing in, without a trace of rotten smell. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 393. There were indeed more than 100 people who came to this place back then. A warlord funded their operation and sent a heavily armed reinforced company under him into the mountains. The 15 experts leading the team were them. This group of people has only one purpose, which is to find the tomb of King Dade. There were many wars at that time, and if any treasure could be found from the royal tomb, the warlord's strength would be greatly enhanced. Therefore, he worked hard for this matter, and all the people he selected were good players. They set out on the road with a black gem based on a sheepskin map. Among the 15 people headed by them, 8 of them were descendants of tomb robbers from the 4 sections. They were all top masters at the time. The other 3 were machine masters, descendants of the Luban lineage, and the last 4 were the famous Mr. Yin Yang at the time. The parchment scroll and the black jade stone were found in another warring state's tomb, so they followed the above prompts to gather people and went into the Himalayas together. Just like our route into the mountain, they also passed through the Sea of Flowers and finally came to the sacrificial cave. At that time, there were no snakes in the cave, but there were many traps, but they were able to crack them all one by one. Immediately afterwards, they came to the water pool and opened the stone chamber leading to the ice jasper coffin. As soon as the 3 people who explored the way got in, they went crazy and killed each other inside. Mr. Yin and Yang quickly acted and the others were able to walk in safely. After arriving in the tomb, they were all shocked by the coffin, but the 4 Yin and Yang gentlemen did not allow them to touch the coffin, saying that there was something powerful inside and that if they moved, they would die. So they all left the stone chamber and walked down from the small pool. On that small staircase, more than a dozen people died directly because they touched the mechanism above. After passing through the woods and walking on the grass, I was attacked by a bunch of random monsters, and another 20 or 30 people died. As we walked toward the valley here, we encountered countless traps on the road. In addition to those who died while crossing the snowy mountains, there were only more than 20 people alive when we were standing where we are now. What we have to face next is something even more terrifying. However, after he said this, he was unwilling to say more and just kept asking us to go back quickly. When we saw his expression, we looked very frightened. I am afraid that what we will encounter behind this is something we cannot imagine. Senior, please excuse me, but in the notes my grandfather took out, why did he say that all of you are dead? Huang Wangsheng asked. Alas, we moved forward, but I was injured and had to step back. They set up a camp for me, gave me some food and weapons, and said they would pick me up when the matter was done. The man kept sighing. Actually, we all knew at that time that I was just waiting to die here, but we didn't expect that I would become the last person alive. We were a little surprised that the truth was like this. He looked at our shocked eyes, smiled bitterly, and said I thought I couldn't survive 2 or 3 days, but I don't know why, I kept living. After waiting for so many years, their hair is turning white, I know they will never come back. Perhaps, this place is really like what the legend says, with the supreme power of the great Virtue King, which allowed me to survive. He looked at the sky and kept sighing. Senior, have you ever heard of an earthly immortal named Lao San, Man Yuping asked suddenly. The third child? A trace of surprise flashed in the man's eyes. Back then, we asked him to join us, but he said we shouldn't come, otherwise we would all die. Now it seems that he was right. The two of them are descendants of Lao San, Huang Wangsheng said. Unexpected. After hearing this, the man looked at Sumu and me Na Yuping and said, everything is God's will. I didn't expect that guy, the third brother, to even take the step. We were a little surprised. Did the master say something to him back then? The third child whispered to me that I would survive and still owe them a favor. I think I know what the sentence means today, the man said to us. This was the first time we saw him smile. That's all, since everything is God's will, I will accompany you on this journey. You don't want to call me senior, just call me Uncle Fu. Finally, he decided to take us deep into the search for the royal tomb. The team continued to move forward, and with the addition of Uncle Fu, the leader naturally changed. He walked at the front of the team, very fast, and we young people we almost couldn't keep up with him. He turned back and said to us, follow up quickly. If we walk 10 miles ahead, we will reach the next point, and we will have to climb up the cliff by then. The road in front of us can no longer be called a road. It is all covered with weeds and small bushes. We have to use a knife to cut a way forward. After walking forward for about half an hour, we finally left this area. In the small jungle, we came to a place with a wide view, but there was no way forward for us. At our feet, there was a steep cliff. Looking down, we saw an abyss, and the blackness below us. You can't even see the bottom. On the cliff, there are huge glaciers extending down the cliff. At first glance, they look like waterfalls. If you go down here, you won't be able to go down even if there is a rope, it's too high. Zhang Yanfang looked down, shook his head and said. If you want to get down from here, you have to have some skills.